Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending I think this is the fourth annual Black History program that I've put together. So thank you for supporting the libraries and the Black History Month program. First, want to say thank you to our dean over here, Dean Wayne, who graciously supports us every year when we want to do these sorts of things. So we want to acknowledge him and thank him for supporting us in these sorts of things. So what I'd like to do first is we're going to start out with a poem from our student Brianna, and then we'll have an introduction of our speaker for today, Tong Mack, which I absolutely love. She's one of my favorite people here on campus, and I think she knows that because I've told her that a few times. But I wanted to thank you all, and we'll go ahead and start out with our student Brianna, who works here at the libraries. She has put together a special poem, and it kind of relates to Carol's book a little bit. Okay, so welcome, Brianna. Thank you.
This poem is called Good Girls. Good girls don't yap their gums, they sit and look pretty. Eyes low and shoulders back, you sit there and look pretty. Smart girls don't need to open their mouths. Smart girls just hush. You sit there with your posture real taut and look like you're good enough. You admire in your reflection, full lips and brown skin. You read books and you study hard, and you look pretty doing it. You open your mouth and the world is shook at your gaze. You stand there, posture so taut, like you have something to say. Being good does one no good when you realize you're it. A shining star in the midst of dark holes, eager to make you quit. Good girls are just as smart and loud as any man. With heads held high and eyes alert, Black girls chant, yes, we can.
Okay, thank you for that, Brianna. And just to give you a little bit of information about our speaker today, Tong Mack is an accomplished leader in higher education. With nearly 20 years of experience, Carol has a long-standing commitment to mentoring and graduating scores of students, creating innovative strategies for success, empowering women to lead regardless of their position, and collaborating with community stakeholders. Currently, Carol is an assistant dean at the University of Cincinnati with the College of Arts and Sciences. For the past 6 years, Carol has served as the College Conduct Administrator for Academic Misconduct and works collaboratively with the Office of Student Conduct and Community Standards. She is the co-founder of the University of Cincinnati's Black Women on the Move, an employee research group designed to create systematic and holistic changes university-wide to support and empower Black female staff members. She has also built the university's first cultural competence workshop series for the academic advising staff in the College of Arts and Sciences. Carol began her career upon graduating from the University of New Hampshire, where she was a recruitment and retention specialist for the university, later becoming an assistant director of academic advising. Carol's student-centered approach and commitment to equity and inclusion has been recognized by students, alumni, and colleagues, earning her awards including the Outstanding LGBTQ Faculty Staff Award, the Diversity Hall of Fame Award, and the Mighty Lion Award. In December of 2017, Carol released her first book, Being Bernadette, From Polite Science to Finding the Black Girl Magic Within. This memoir recalls her experiences as a young single mother in college, her determination to graduate and become a leader in higher education. Without further ado, here's Ms. Tong Mack.
So I'm probably going to be standing here sometimes, and then I'm probably going to pull a chair and sit down because I didn't know I was going to be standing. I didn't know there was going to be a podium here because I got my sit-down shoes. So I don't walk around in these things on a regular basis. So I was like, whoo, I'm going to have to sit down sometimes. But really, thank you to my sister Misha for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I saw the flyer in the elevator, and it took me by surprise. Because I just didn't realize it was going to be posted in different places. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to say thank you to a student who works for us, Preston right here, who decided, what's that thing going on in that room? I said, you know what? If you stay, you might be surprised. So of course, as I'm being introduced, he looks at me like, what? You wrote a book? Things happen. So again, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate this. I'm also going to say thank you to the UC Black Women on the Move. Raise your hand if you're here. UC Black Women on the Move. Yes. My sisters showed up to support me, and I really appreciate that. I'm going to start. I'm reading a few parts from my book, and I'm going to read a few chapters. I'm going to read some portions of chapter 1. I'm going to move around to another chapter, and then I'm going to embarrass my husband a little bit, who works here. Thankfully, he's not here to be embarrassed. And so I'm going to read, there's a chapter in the book that I wrote about him. I didn't say too much, because, you know, I didn't want to say too much, because he works here at the university, and, you know, I protect my husband as every opportunity I get. So you know how it is, folks sometimes think they know you because you wrote something. I'm going to have to go in. So I decided, you know, I'm only going to share so much about him. So this first chapter that I'm going to read from is chapter 1, and the title of this chapter is A Caribbean Girl Takes on the Streets of New York City. America, where people walked on the streets of gold. I'm going to stop right here for a second to say that when you're in another country, at least for me, and you see certain images on TV, you think America is a certain thing, because you don't know anything different. You just don't know. So this is how I started off this particular chapter. America, where people walked on streets of gold. I bought into that dream for a while I encountered the city's bright lights. I remember our plane landing like it was yesterday. There were so many lights. It was absolutely amazing. As we drove through the streets and highways, I was mesmerized by the tall buildings, the taxis, the long, wide freeways, and so many people. I was so excited. America, this must be what heaven feels like. So I thought. But nothing was further from the truth. When we finally got out of the car, we were not in a house, but an apartment. Again, when you grow up in a house, you don't know what an apartment is. I didn't understand. Back in Antigua, again, that's where I'm from, small island in the Caribbean, known for our 365 beaches. Today will be a great day to be there, by the way. We had a 4-bedroom house with a yard, coconut trees, guavas, mango trees, all within a few steps. And now we're in an apartment? Why? Were we not in America where life was better? We stayed in a basement apartment with limited space. Boxes were packed against the wall because we were preparing to move with the addition to the family, my sister Sharon. I got very little sleep that night. Still, I couldn't wait to see New York City in the daylight. I wanted to know what the people were like and what the streets were like. I wanted to know if I could see any resemblance of home. Maybe it was going to be great, and I wouldn't miss Antigua. So we moved into a 2-bedroom apartment unit on the 3rd floor of a building between 170th and White Place near the Grand Concourse. It was bigger than the basement, but it required 3 different keys to get all the way inside of it. 1 key for the outside door, and 2 other keys for the front door. How was this possible just to get into your own home? But the apartment was always clean. My mother would have it no other way. Pine Sol and Clorox were our friends. She worked all day and some holidays cleaning the homes of other people. And there was no way she would come home to a dirty place. After Lisa and I completed our household chores, my mother would sweep her finger over the table and the sink or dresser, and it had better be clean or we wouldn't hear the end of it. How many people have had that experience? Mm-hmm. Yes, you know it. You already know. That Pine Sol was strong. The windows in our living room gave me the best view of the block we lived on. I had never seen so many people in one place. They looked like they were going somewhere. Why were they in a hurry? They looked so relaxed. They didn't look relaxed. I rarely heard greetings like my grandmother used to give our neighbors. The people here spoke different languages and had so many different skin tones. The elderly people didn't get the respect I was used to seeing them get, which I thought was odd. Pets seemed like family members, licking the faces of their owners in public, instead of like animals that belonged in the yard or under the house, and certainly not inside of the apartment. Again, in my country, the dogs stay outside. The people and their pets were all strangers to me. I wondered if I would survive outside of our apartment. At first, Lisa and I were allowed to go only to the supermarket while my mother was away. She literally gave us a trial run by walking us downstairs, then to the supermarket, buying items, giving the money to the cashier, walking back home without interacting with anyone, and finally opening the apartment door with the keys. We were told to never, and I mean never, open the door for anyone, not even the police. She said they're going to have to break down this door if they need anything. You cannot trust anyone. Just because they're wearing uniforms doesn't mean they're the police officers. Maybe that's one of the reasons I have trust issues, especially with the law. When I woke up on most mornings, I rushed to the window and peeked outside. I was disappointed. The streets were not filled with gold. Outside it was warm, but I didn't feel the island breeze. I didn't smell the fresh grass. I didn't hear the crowing of the roosters or my grandmother's pleasant voice greeting everyone who walked by the window with her neighborly good morning. I don't know why I thought the streets would be spotless. Growing up, I had heard stories about America, what America looked like, and I had seen many TV shows. Family members who visited the island or friends who lived in the U.S. never had a genuine conversation about life in New York City. Since I'm a people watcher, I had some assumptions based on how they were dressed. They had what looked like expensive clothes, shoes, lots of jewelry, hair always perfect, and their kids were dressed accordingly. Little did I know that was part of the brainwashing. They too were brainwashed to show others life that may not be real. I soon found that there was nothing like living the experience. Today I would tell anyone coming to America, hoping to achieve his or her dreams, that the streets are not paved with gold. The streets are tough. One must learn to defend oneself, and sometimes that means defending oneself physically. So that's my first version of chapter 1. And then I'll give you a bit more because I know my sister Misha explained that, having the theme of more cultural experiences would be what I needed to kind of read more about today. And so the other piece came from actually the chapter 15, which is Being Bernadette, which I really explained what it was like on a regular everyday basis, like what time I woke up, what we did in school. And this chapter again is called Being Bernadette. I woke up at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning during the week to get ready for school. I was responsible for my sister Lisa. As the eldest child, I had to make sure our uniforms were ironed. So again, in the British system, no matter where you are, you must wear a uniform to school. They don't play around. And the uniforms must be pressed, like they have an inspection to make sure your uniform looks appropriate. That the uniforms were ironed. The pleats had to be just right. All students were checked for compliance with the uniform policy. We had breakfast. So a typical breakfast for us was either porridge, again I know you call it hot cereal, but we call it porridge, cooked with milk, not water. So imagine my surprise when someone made oatmeal here for me with some water. I was like, what is this? It just didn't have that nice creamy taste. Or bread with butter with cheese, ham roll, or fried eggs with slices of cucumbers, tomatoes on the side. Of course, we needed to have freshly brewed tea, picked directly from the plant in the yard. After we ate and got dressed, Lisa and I walked to school, but we had to make a quick stop to say good morning to Auntie. She was my grandmother's eyes and ears, but she wasn't the only one. So at least growing up on an island, you just can't walk around like no one else is going to see something that you've done. They see everything, they know everything, man, the culture may have changed a little bit now, but when I grew up, it was very much so like that. Truthfully, the entire neighborhood saw everything. We wouldn't dare do or say anything we didn't want our grandmother to know. Most days, fear alone kept me on the straight and narrow. How many people were scared of their grandmothers growing up? Yes, I was so scared. I was going to get a whooping or get preyed on or something. I don't know. I was just scared. For some reason, Lisa didn't like school. It just wasn't her thing. I literally had to pull and drag her along so many mornings. She cried on her way to school, but never on the way home. I recently asked her what was the real issue. She mentioned that school was boring. She hated the structure, the work was challenging, she sat for too long, and she was afraid of getting a beating if we were late. Most of her memories were being scared of school. She hated her experience. However, she loved recess. Imagine that. On the island, students must be on their best behavior. Corporal punishment was common for missed homework, disrespectful behavior, lateness, backtalk, wrinkled uniforms, and a litany of what they deemed to be violation of school policy. So I took a group of students last year to Jamaica. It was my first study abroad experience. I had 13 students. Hopefully you get to meet some of them later. And one of the things I tried to tell them before we left, because we visited the University of the West Indies while we were there. And I tried to tell them, when you get there, the rules are very different. Because you think you're on a college campus doesn't mean that the rules don't apply. So the kids there, or the students there, also wore uniform on a college campus. And you must be respectful of the teacher or the professor standing in front of you. You can't eat and carry on conversations that's on your phone. That's just not going to happen. At least not in the British system. Maybe some classrooms are a little bit more flexible, but in general, that's just not the way it works there. I was definitely subject to corporal punishment twice to my memory, and at least on one occasion for an incomplete assignment. I padded the back of my uniform with thin composition books to reduce the pain or laceration from the belt. I would have liked Saint Bernadette, again this whole idea of Saint Bernadette, to make an appearance to save me, but she was nowhere to be found. Let's see. We had one black and white TV in the house, which meant we watched whatever my grandparents watched. The Beverly Hillbillies, Gunsmoke, Mouse Size, the Jeffersons, Sanford and Son, everything religious. The local news, BBC, gotta watch BBC. And like clockwork, wrestling. My grandmother talked to the characters as if she was in the audience and dozed off several times, but we wouldn't dare change the channel. You better not change the channel. So my last piece, which I'm now going to embarrass my husband a little bit. I don't think he likes when I do this, but it'll be my first time embarrassing him. Well, yeah, it'll be my first time embarrassing him. So this particular chapter is called The Man, the Mission, the Magic. It was one way that I can express how much I love him without giving too much of, here's when we met, here's how it all went down. No, I didn't want to do all that. So I figured I would do it in poetry form instead. Again, the man, the mission, the magic. He loves me. He loves me. He tells me he loves me every day. And we never go to sleep resolving an issue. With his personality, in his head, we may have moved on from the topic, but he knows I must hear words and not imagine them. He respects me. Unless a man respects you, he will not accept a child that's not his biologically, nor give her his last name, nor treat her as if she were his own. My mother instilled in me that a man should accept the cow and the calf. If not, keep it moving. So my mother has all these sayings. Her point was, if a man's going to accept you, he's also going to accept your child. Because I was a single mother before I met him. He decided to adopt my daughter many, many years ago. She grew up with him. That's the only dad she knew. And so my mother always said, if he's going to accept you, he must accept the calf. Those were her words. I didn't know where she comes up with these colloquialisms. My daughter adores him. You should see her Facebook postings each year on his birthday and on Father's Day. He's a great father. Despite his other administrative duties, research, and other responsibilities, he makes time for homework with our children. We split the duties. I take care of English and social studies. He takes care of math and science. He's very patient with his explanations, and he will repeat the example as many times as necessary to make sure they understand the information. Sometimes the tasks are not complete until after midnight. Still, he will answer emails and complete other work tasks that were not finished during the day. He can't fix everything. I always tease him. He thinks he's Black Jesus. In our house, we have a picture of the Last Supper with Black Jesus and his disciples. How many of y'all got that? Yes, I got one of those. Yes, you know, Black. I know you see white Jesus. I know you see that. But in my house, I got Black Jesus with the Black disciples. With Black Jesus and his disciples. So every time he tries to fix yet another problem at work, I always remind him that he's not Black Jesus. He really can't save them all. He loves to travel. In 2016, we had our first Caribbean cruise, and we visited 6 different islands. We explored the Caribbean culture before we actually visited my native country in 2017. There's something about having little to no access to technology. He's an excellent planner and attentive to small details. And then I don't have like a description of each thing, but these are just literally very quick sentences. He gives me butterflies 20 years later. He's my personal Idris Elba. Back up off him. I'm going to repeat that. Let me repeat that. He's my personal Idris Elba. Back up off him. He's a mama's boy. He wants to wear comfortable clothes to work, but he knows he will be perceived negatively. He's too patient. He's no pushover except for his daughter. He's a science geek. He's the best organic chemist. He will be dean, whether it's here or somewhere else, he will be. You got to write things into existence. He's a workaholic. He's overprepared for important meetings. Don't test him. He thinks. One of his favorite quotes by Mike Tyson is, "Everybody has a plan until they get hit." He should have been a lawyer. He has too many gray hairs for his age. It's genetic. He's not immune to the conditions of being a Black man in America. He wears too many hats. It's time to give up at least one. He believes he's Black Superman, son of Jor-El. I am not Lois Lane. He's a stress-free husband. He's the provider like nobody's business. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He makes me tea. Yes, he makes me hot tea with milk, not just water, with milk and sugar. Sometimes it's not always the right amount of sugar, but when he brings it to me in bed, who cares? Hashtag Black Man Magic. Yeah.
So far with what Carol has shared with us, does anybody have any questions for her?
Yes.
Where's your husband from?
He's from here. He's from New York City. So I'm originally from Antigua, but I grew up in New York City, literally less than a mile away from him. But I met him when I went to college in Vermont, of all places, Vermont. So yeah, he's from New York City. He's from the Bronx. Yeah.
What brought you to Cincinnati?
My husband. That's all I can say about that. Yes.
I don't have a question, but I met you.
Yes. We just sat together on Saturday.
Yeah, on Saturday, so
Yes.
cool to see you again.
Yes, it's good to see you as well. Yes.
Did you raise your daughter the way your mother raised you?
Not 100%. So, being from the Caribbean and also having the American experience, there's some things that definitely changed. I thought, the whole corporal punishment was really very rigid for me. I do believe in a whooping sometimes. But no, we didn't really. My husband was the only one allowed not to do spanking. So I did some, but I outgrew that very quickly. Because I just didn't want her to grow up thinking it was okay for a man to hit her. Absolutely not. So he was not allowed to do any discipline. Not for her. I mean, of course, we talked about things, if things happened or went down, but he was not allowed to do any kind of whoopings.
I have one. So what was your biggest surprise once you got here? What you weren't able to see on TV? What surprised you the most about coming to America?
That it just wasn't what I thought. I thought it was going to be like this happy-go-lucky, just the stuff you see on TV. You never see anything bad about America, at least back then. Maybe it's different now. You just didn't see anything negative about the U.S. You just didn't. You see all the nice things. And when people visited, they only told you nice things. No one really said anything about, well, you do know, when it snows, you still got to go to work. You know, when you're on an island, it doesn't snow there. I mean, the average temperature is like 78 degrees. So, oh really? It's cold outside. You really want me to? But yeah.
And much like any other place, there's poverty here. You probably never
Never saw it.
That. Yeah.
Never saw it. I didn't think it existed here.
Yeah, and so my experience going to New York City for the first time, I was really surprised. I mean, I grew up here in the Midwest, so it's like you see these things on TV and it's nothing like, I'm like, oh my God, especially the parking. So for anyone who's never gone to New York City,
Yeah, it's
when
rough.
you see the cars stacked on top of the other cars,
Yes.
it's like, what the heck is going on here?
Yes, you're
and
right.
then going to Broadway plays, I'm walking down the street, I'm like, we just paid $200 for this ticket, but there's trash piled up 8 miles long.
So it's a different
Everybody
place.
loves this place. And I do have to say there's lots of culture there and lots of things I did enjoy on several trips to New York. So I do appreciate those experiences. And as far as the study abroad is concerned, I never participated while I was a student here, but I really wish now that I'm older, I'm like, wow, I really missed out on some experiences. So, I do appreciate the fact that you've extended it not only to being an administrator, but you've encouraged the study abroad experience as well.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted students to learn, again, I'm not from Jamaica, but I want students to learn a little bit about the Caribbean because I think people see it as a vacation spot and not necessarily as a lived place, a lived experience. So I'm going to read this last thing and I'll have the students come up because they're here just to speak a little bit about their experience in Jamaica, and of course you have the opportunity to ask questions. So the last thing I'm going to read is the epilogue, which is Black Girl Magic. I had to dig deeper, dream bigger, and climb higher as a black immigrant woman living in America. I had to be honest with who I am. I have acknowledged that I despise the rules, and if they're not fair and especially if they're not fair and just. Black Girl Magic is demanding systemic changes, even if I'm the only one standing. My Black Girl Magic is the resilience needed to stare down microaggressive behaviors and intimidation, which show up in forms of smiles, niceties, and well-intended commentary. Have you all experienced that? I know you have. This type of resilience isn't for the faint of heart. My sisters have stepped up beside me and held the torch of freedom. Thank you, UCBA, UC Black Women on the Move. My Black Girl Magic is coloring outside the lines and loving the new art with no apologies and having the confidence to know it's worth more than I'm being paid. My Black Girl Magic is knowing that there's nothing polite about silence when racial violence rears its ugly head. Nonetheless, I can rise like a phoenix and use the fire within me to clear the path for others. My Black Girl Magic is stepping out of my comfort zone with the courage to fail, make mistakes, and convince others failure isn't the end. It revealed my true self. I've had to conjure Saint Bernadette with the realization that she can't save me from professional bullies, wannabe cartoonists, and racial trauma. My Black Girl Magic is accepting that my education from a top liberal arts college doesn't make me immune from the harsh reality that my naturalization papers and citizenship aren't the only requirements for the American dream. It's a personal journey that needs tremendous grit. I didn't imagine the young girl from an unrecognizable island on the world map, known for its 365 beaches, would become anything more than the average girl from the South Bronx who wanted to live the Antiguan American dream. I should have listened to my grandmother who told me that I was special, I was loved, and blessed beyond imagination. Today I know she was referring to the Black Girl Magic that would emerge when I needed it most. I continue to use my voice on Black Girl Magic to shed light on the marginalized, motivate others to speak their truth, and empower other women to unleash their Black Girl Magic. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to ask the two students who came, Faith and Dominique. They both came to Jamaica with me last year. And they'll tell you a little bit about their experience, about 5 minutes or so, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of them. Do you want to come up, or? Yes, you should. You should.
So as Dean Mack said, we spent a short stint in Jamaica. So we started in Montego Bay, or what they call Mo Bay, and then we went to Kingston, and then we went back to Montego Bay for the duration of the trip, to end the trip out. So for me, it was like amazing. Coming here, and I was like, oh, I'll never study abroad. But then I seen Jamaica, and I said, oh, that might be fun. You know, I just got in my locks, and I'm like, oh, I really embrace, the culture. And so when I got there, I think one of our first days, we went to the Rasta village, the Rastafari village. And so it was awesome. I mean, like, amazing for me to just go there, experience it, learn, why they have locks, learn the culture, learn about just any and everything. But before then, we had a little bit of it, talking about it in class, but just actually being there and experiencing that culture with, just everybody, just experiencing the culture, learning about it. It was amazing. I think another time we were out somewhere, everybody was like, hey Rasta. I'm like, no, I'm not one. I don't want you to know. No. And so it was just, being, everybody embracing us, no matter who you were, where you were from. And so one guy I met, he was like, you're not a Rasta. He's like, but you carry yourself like one. I'm like, because my hair? He's like, no, because what's here? And so that was like mind blowing to me, because it's not about, all these images. And so I think Dean Mack mentioned her perception of America was great, but some people have this perception of the Rastafarians of being negative, a negative connotation, but in reality it's not. It's a spiritual journey, and going there, it was like, wow, so this is what Bob Marley stood for, this is what their culture stood for and stands for. So now I'm like, I came back and told my mom, and she's like, what is this one love, blah, blah, blah. And so I had to break it down to her. So now we're going in the summer to Jamaica on a Jamaican cruise. And so I'm like, bringing, you got to bring people with you so they can learn the culture and experience it. And so for me, it was just amazing. Even going to the West Indies, going in the classrooms, the classroom settings are totally different. We spent, 3 hours in a session. And the first day, the professor was like, y'all need to understand, things are a little different here, because we were getting antsy, like when we go to the bathroom, we do that. She's like, we don't take breaks. She's like, we don't take breaks, and we like, what? What do you mean? So for me, I mean, it was just amazing. So I won't talk about everything. I'll let Faith have some to say.
I definitely, when I first came here, I never thought I would study abroad. Even I waited until I got accepted into the program to even tell my father that I was studying abroad. I was like, hey, so I'm going to Jamaica, and he was like, what? He hung up on me. But I know, after a while, me actually going there, my favorite part was really learning about it beforehand. I'm a learner, and I love learning about different cultures and different people. And one thing she did say is those perceptions, you only see so much on TV about Rastafarians or Jamaicans, or they're so laid back, or they're always doing something like smoking or doing this, and when you go there, you're like, wow, this is not exactly what they portray on TV. And meeting people, and they do embrace you, they say hi to you. And one of my favorite part was going to, even though it was 3 hours at the university, I really love learning about the history of Jamaica and seeing so many of my people. I think it was a big culture shock for me, because I seen so many people who looked like me, and when in reality, coming, in America, we're the minority. So a lot of times when you go places, you don't see somebody who looks like you. Even in my classrooms, I'm the only black woman, or even the woman in my classroom. So it was just so amazing seeing everybody, going to the Rastafarian village, going to the Maroon village. That was so interesting for me, because I'm like, wow, I never knew about this history. I never knew they went to the trees because they wanted to escape, and they knew the terrain, and they created their own culture and their own way of life. And you know, I think they said they hadn't had a killing in
200 and something
200
years.
and something years, and like I was like, and they was like, it was the first one in so long.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what? Like, from where I'm from, like, you know, you hear it. I don't even be home and my parents be like, oh, somebody just died around the corner, or my brother's about to go play basketball, and, you know, my mom's arguing with him not to go, and then next thing you know, somebody gets shot and killed at the rec center. And so for me, that was really shocking. I want to go. Before I was just so nervous about going outside of the country because I've never been, and my dad like kind of put that fear in me, like they gonna kidnap you. And it's all about like first stay with your group. Of course, like if you're a tourist, like you're a lot more gullible for kidnappings and things like that. And that's with anywhere. That's here. That's if you go to a different like California, even Ohio, like Columbus, with all these girls going missing and things like that. You never really know where you can go or what can happen. But it's just being, you know, having that information and learning about the culture, not just going there for the fun times. Like we were right down the street from the beach, and that was so fun. But it was also being able to go to the locals, and I went to like on the last day we were able to go buy stuff. And I remember the one lady, she was like, "Don't be afraid to bargain with me. Like I'm your friend." And I was just like, "Okay." And so it was so fun, and I cannot wait to go again. I'm actually going on a cruise to the Western Caribbean. I forgot the country. I don't know what it's called. But I forgot. It starts with an N. But I'm going to the Western Caribbean for spring break. So
And you'll know a little bit now.
Yeah, so I know I know a little bit of not what to expect, because you know every place is different, but going there with an open mind and ready to learn about the culture, not just to have fun, but to actually learn about the place I'm staying in. In the volunteer place.
I was gonna be
The children's place. That was so fun. At the children's, it was like a children's school. Yes, it was. The little kids, they're so adorable, and they were like, you know, they warmed up to you right away. They're like, oh yes. So that was one of my favorite parts, is going there and helping, teaching, and seeing how they live and how happy they are, even if you just have a little. It's not the little bit that's counted. It's what you have now. So.
To piggyback on Faith, also we went, did you go? Yeah, the Bob Marley. We actually went to Bob Marley's studio, and 2 of the students that were on the trip with us recorded a song there. I don't know, do you have it?
I don't have it.
So yeah, they recorded a song there, and it was just like crazy. Like out of the itinerary, you know, Mack was like, "Y'all want to record here?" And they were like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Okay, we'll make it happen." And we went. They set up the time and went back. Our tour guide was so kind to take them back, and they recorded the song. And I mean, it was just to be able to record what Bob Marley and other greats have recorded was just amazing. And even we had a music course where they talked about the influence of Chinese culture, Asian culture on Jamaican music, and how, you know, everybody always assumes it's, you know, Bob Marley, X, Y, and Z, but the influence that the Asian culture has had on the music and the reggae music in Jamaica was also amazing.
Yeah, I think that part was really exciting for the students because one of the students told me, of course I didn't know these things, that Jay-Z recorded 411 at that same studio. So for them to have the opportunity, and it's really good to know the language, because initially when they tried to get the space, they said, "Oh yeah, no, we're booked." And then I approached the lady and I spoke Patois, which is what we speak, and she said, "Okay, you could come back later." We went back later. But it was really awesome for them to just record. I mean, who does that? Who records in like Bob Marley's studio? I mean, it was amazing. Questions for the students about culture?
How, in reference to the food that you ate, how is it different from there?
Okay, so I'm a picky eater. I do not like anything, and for me, I was like, I used to not like beans. Like they call it rice and peas, and it's rice and beans. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Like I go to Island Fridays all the time now. I'm like, I must be part Jamaican or something. I don't like food, and the fact that I love their food is like, that really spoke out to me, because it was definitely a little different. It took a little longer to make, but it was still worth it, because it's like, you know, put some heart in it. So
For me, I think every stop I had oxtail. I love oxtail, but going there, the oxtail was like fall off the bone. I said, "What? I'm coming back." And then I went to the beef patty. So like we always had to stop at Juicy's, or what was the other one?
I forgot.
Yeah.
So we always had to have a beef patty, and I came back here and I said I need a good beef patty. And when I went to New Orleans, I found a spot and I said, "Wow, I'm coming back." So the food was awesome, like amazing.
10 out of 10.
Did you have callaloo soup?
Oh yes, yes,
Great.
yeah. It was great.
What was it like to not feel like the minority?
It was, I don't know, like it just felt like I belonged. That's what it felt like. It wasn't like, oh, like an empowering situation. It was just like, you know, you see the representation, even though like technically I was the minority because I'm American. And so, you know, even if you look at me the way I walk, the way I talk, like we do have a different style than those in the Caribbean islands. So, but just to be able to be around, you know, people who look like me, like that was amazing. Even I'm from Cleveland and from the inner city of Cleveland, so most of the times I am around people that look like me when I'm in the inner city. Now when I come out the inner city, it's not that many people that look like me, but it just felt like I belonged there. That's what it felt like. It wasn't, I don't know.
Let me tell you this, okay? Because a lot of people might not know. We have this paranoia thing because we're always being looked at. Did you feel that?
No.
How did it feel not to feel like that? That's what I'm talking about. You know, wasn't there? I mean, it had to be a good feeling.
It was. Yeah, it was. I don't know. Like it's just it's.
You know what I'm talking about.
It's unexplainable in a sense. It's like one of those things that you have to experience for yourself. Like for me personally, I can't explain like how like it felt. Like I could be myself. I didn't have to really watch not really watch my tongue, but like watch how I spoke or watch myself so I wouldn't. So I'm like, oh, somebody's watching me. I can't do X, Y, and Z, or they're gonna, you know, call the police on me or something like that.
Right.
So that was great.
I would ditto fake sentiments. Even one time we were, you know, the police officers carry the large rifles, and there was a time where it was three of us. We went in groups. 3 of us. And we were shopping, and so the police officer walked past, and you know he's like, "How are you guys? You guys having a good day?" And I'm like, "You walking with this big rifle?" But, so like in my mind, I'm, you know, am I being serious? But he was just like checking on us, making sure we were okay, and you know he went on about his day, and I said, I don't have to worry about, you know, police pulling me over. Am I gonna make it? Do I have to pull up Facebook Live and stream? And so that was like this sense of just feeling like I belong here, you know, and I don't have to, like Faith said, I don't have to worry about how I'm addressing somebody or, you know, how I'm acting, carrying myself. I don't have to be on pins and needles when I'm talking to authority. You know, as long as I'm doing what I need to do, I don't have a problem. Even though here we know sometimes that's not always the case. So for me, it was just like, I belong here, even though I think we had a brief talk about at the West Indies colorism, and how sometimes the lighter you are, the more privilege you are afforded. But even then, you know, it was still like it's internally, but it's not, you know, it's not going to hinder you from, you know, with your interactions with authorities. So it's more so, you know, people want to be lighter. Or people want this and want that, but it's not like it's gonna not hinder you as much as it would here from you being just African American or black, you know, from the black community culture.
And every you know, every country, every society has its own faults. You know, I won't say, you know, every police officer is a good police officer, or every authority figure, or even every person there is a good person or is open to other people coming to their country. We even do that sometimes here in America, where we're very, how do I say it? Mean to put it towards immigrants and towards people who want to come over and or even just, you know, they're just around just trying to see the culture and how Americans live. And so that was one thing as well. It's like going there and not being afraid that, hey, like they're gonna, you know, look at me differently because I'm from America, which they probably were, but you know, it's not. They weren't outwardly doing it. So at least like I was like, okay, like you're very welcoming and you're welcoming us into your culture and you want us to learn more about it. And not just the pretty parts and the beaches and the sunsets and the trees, just like, you know, going into the city and seeing that, hey, you know, we're just like you guys. So that was fun.
Thank you.
So first I'd like to thank Carol
Thank
for
you.
coming over and sharing her book with us, and also thank the two young ladies that just left here. Lots of good information, and it's been a while for me since I've been out of the country, but I do encourage people that even if you can't go out of the country, to go out and just explore other cultures. Get to know people and other things, because you don't know what you don't like unless you give it an opportunity. So I'd like to encourage that for starters. I would like to say that it's been a while, but with my own personal experience, the furthest away I've gone is Central America to Costa Rica. And that was an experience in itself. Traveling, you do all this research. I get off the plane and I'm like, whoa. Totally unprepared for it. I didn't speak Spanish. My best friend, I had gone there to visit her because she worked with the UN, and she had to give me all of these tips in case I went out on my own, and it was just quite the experience. So it gave me an opportunity to learn how others must feel once they're migrating to this place. So it's quite the experience. If you've never gone out and had the experience on your own, I encourage you to do something new and different, and it will give you an appreciation for some of the people that, you know, are around you. It will give you that appreciation. And having said that, we'll go ahead and conclude with our final piece of poetry from Brianna.
This poem is called Sunflower. When I was a young girl, I'd sit on my grandmother's lap. She'd caress me and rub my back. She was the kind of woman who didn't take kind to fuss, and she was the one who used words like child hush. When I thought of a black woman, she came to mind. Hair swimming down her back, dark skin divine. She would tell me that I can be magic too. Don't be scared of the sun, baby. The darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. She always told me how I shined, what she called magic, but in real time. She said the sound of our laugh, the smell of our skin, and the weight of our arms were like cinnamon, a perfect sprinkle of sugar on a bitter day. She was a woman who always had something to say. She told me young girls blossom and that I would bloom too. And when I did, she would say, look at my sunflower. Look how she shines. My baby girl is magic, ripens with time. She smiles so bright you squint your eyes. Yes, she is the one who comes to mind. My grandmother was magic, bitter and sweet, the perfect combination of the black girl I hope to be.